Have you ever wondered how it's possible to destroy one of your franchise's greatest characters? Now boy, do I have a show for you. Loki is the perfect guide on how to do it in 6 episodes or less. Episode 1 starts out with the scene from Avengers Endgame, where Loki picks up the Tesseract and teleports away. He ends up teleporting to the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, lying in the sand. He's approached by Mongolians, so he jumps on a rock and announces himself. One of the Mongols responds,
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
All of a sudden, there's a bunch of soldiers that come out of portals, led by Hunter B-15, who will call Diversity Hire. She tells him he's under arrest for crimes against the sacred timeline on behalf of the Time Variance Authority. He tells them to get out of his way. Instead of using his powers, he just walks towards them like an idiot, and Diversity Hire hits him in the face with her baton. She puts on a collar that suppresses his powers and he falls to the ground. They pick him up and bring him through a portal to the Time Variance Authority, or the TVA for short. Loki tries to run, but Diversity Hire uses a magical remote to teleport him back. Next we get naked Loki for a couple seconds, because males are apparently allowed to be eye candy. We meet a computer AI called Miss Minutes. She says the Timekeepers created the sacred timeline and preserved the proper flow of time. She continues to say Loki is a variant, which is someone who veered off the path of the sacred timeline. Basically, there's no free will and everything is predetermined. So all those tough decisions that the Avengers and others made, like when Iron Man sacrifices himself, mean nothing apparently. She also states that the TVA was created by the Timekeepers to help keep the sacred timeline intact. Loki is taken to court where we meet Ravonna, aka the strongest Whammon, who's judging his case. She asks him how he pleads and he says not guilty, and goes on to explain that's the Avengers' fault and that they messed with time, which I don't know how he knows that, by the way, but the argument makes sense, right? Not the strongest Whammon. She dismisses it and says that what they did was supposed to happen and what he did was not. Loki reacts like everybody else has seen Avengers Endgame.
Right. Not supposed to happen. According to whom?
The Avengers literally changed their timeline by traveling through time and getting Infinity Stones when they weren't supposed to have them, even though they lost. But apparently they were, even though they got destroyed in their timeline. It's only 16 minutes into the episode and we're already doing this shit. Everybody grab a drink or some weed, maybe both, because you're gonna need it. She finds Loki guilty and sentences him to be reset. Mobius, played by Owen Wilson, convinces strongest Whammon to let him take Loki. He then says this.
I feel like I'm always looking up to you. I like it. It's appropriate.
I can already see where this is going. So begins the therapy session. They go over various things. Mobius shows Loki a reel of his, quote, greatest hits, including a clip showing him as D.B. Cooper, a reference many people, especially younger people, won't get. I barely got it myself. If you don't know who D.B. Cooper is, look it up. It's interesting. It's just there for the trailer so they can trick you into thinking the series was going to be about Loki jumping from time to time, place to place, doing different things in different forms. Mobius shows Loki clips from the future, which confuses him. Loki sees his mother get killed because of a mistake he made. He doesn't believe it and tries to attack Mobius, but uses his magical remote to stop him. Diversity Hire comes in the room and tells Mobius there's a situation. Mobius leaves and Loki uses the magical remote he pickpocketed from Mobius just before to teleport out of the room and into the hallway. Mobius comes back and notices, so the search is on. Loki spots the employee the Tesseract was given to earlier, Casey. Casey opens the drawer and gives Loki the Tesseract. Loki looks in the drawer, sees a bunch of Infinity Stones, and Casey says this.
Oh, we actually got a lot of those. Yeah, some of the guys use them as paperweights.
Completely diminishing their value and importance. Basically meaning the Infinity Saga was nothing in the grand scheme of things, devaluing Nat and Tony's sacrifices, and many others, in every single movie in the process. Diversity Hire barges in along with Mobius and her goons, and Loki teleports back to the interview room. He decides to keep watching the reel, sees Odin's death and starts crying, which is completely out of character, especially for the 2012 Loki. He eventually sees his death, which spooks him. Loki realizes that what he saw was real and he can't go back to his timeline. He tells Mobius, who just walked in,
I don't enjoy hurting people. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear.
Again, they diminish Loki's character. Mobius asks Loki for his help tracking down another variant, reveals that the variant is also him. Cut to a team led by another woman, searching for the variant. They get taken out by the cloaked Loki. I wonder why they did that. In episode 2, we see another team tracking Loki, led by another woman named Hunter C20, get taken out by other Loki, who takes C20 through a portal she activated with TVA gear she stole. Loki, Mobius, and Diversity Hire, along with other agents, investigate the scene. Loki tries to tell them it's a trap and they don't believe him. They reset the timeline and it goes down as a botched mission. Then we get about 20 minutes of Loki researching and talking to Mobius. In that 20 minutes, Loki finds the file on the destruction of Asgard and gets choked up, which again is uncharacteristic. He figures out that if there's a cataclysmic event that wiped everything out, there will be no variance energy detected. He tells Mobius and explains it by messing with Mobius's lunch, which is meant to be funny, but no dice. They test it and it works. Mobius remembers the kablooey gum that the other Loki gave a little girl at a scene he investigated earlier in episode 1. They use that to find the cataclysmic event, or nexus event as they call it, and decide on one. A warehouse in Alabama in 2050 which was wiped out by a hurricane. They and Diversity Hire's team go to the warehouse and investigate. Other Loki is watching with the security cameras. Loki and Diversity Hire run into someone who other Loki enchanted and enchants Diversity Hire, and talks to Loki through her about how better they are than him. Mobius and the rest of the team find C20 tied up and she keeps repeating, "It's real, it's real, it's real, it's real." Yes, it is real, but we'll get to that later. She enchants another guy and keeps talking. C20 reveals she told other Loki how to find the timekeepers. How she knows, I have no clue. Other Loki enchants another guy and beats Loki up. And again, he doesn't use his powers, but he'll use them to dry off his clothes. B-15 alerts Mobius, so they go after Loki. Other Loki finally comes out and takes off their cloak, and there... a woman! Why do I feel like I did this in my last review? Oh yeah. Anyway, right after, she says the line that describes this whole season.
This isn't about you.
They kept referring to her as a he before, like in Black Widow, but again, no dice. Female Loki sets off charges she set up in the warehouse and creates a bunch of branches off the sacred timeline, causing chaos in the TVA. Female Loki opens up a portal and leaves. The crew tries to catch up to our Loki, but he goes through the portal as well. That's the end of episode 2. Episode 3 opens up with female Loki enchanting C20, tricking her into revealing where the timekeepers are. Female Loki comes through the portal to the TVA. She takes out a bunch of guards and our Loki comes through the portal. He gets his daggers out of the locker Diversity Hire put them in after Mobius tried to give them to him before they went to the warehouse. Both Lokis fight. Strongest Whammon shows up and our Loki uses his magical remote and opens a portal that teleports both of them. They then fight for the remote and the battery's dead. We find out they were teleported to Lamentus 1, which is having a Nexus event. Female Loki says her plan is to take down the TVA. She says she's not called Loki anymore and wants him to call her Sylvie. But we'll call her Bestest Loki ever. For the rest of the episode, they go on a mission to charge the battery and argue. In between, they sneak on a train to get to a ship that was supposed to take off before the planet is destroyed. While they're on the ship, Bestest Loki ever says she taught herself how to enchant and do magic as a child. This happens.
Must have been would-be princesses? Or perhaps another prince?
A bit of both. I suspect the same as you.
Then this happens.
She sings, come home. When she sings, come home. Men cry and dance to the voice of the stanza. Come down.
Since Loki changed back into his TVA clothes, he blows their cover and they fight the guards. Bestest Loki ever has no problem taking out the guards, but Loki gets thrown out a window. Bestest Loki ever jumps out after him and we see that the magical remote broke. Loki says they should still try to catch the ship, because even though it never made it off the planet, they weren't there before, so the outcome could change. So they decide to slowly walk the whole way. Bestest Loki ever reveals that when she enchanted C20, those memories were real, but she just inserted herself. All of the TVA employees are variants who had their memories wiped. They fail to make it to the ship before it's destroyed and are stuck on the planet, making this whole episode pointless. Episode 4 is a flashback to the bestest Loki ever as a child. She's playing when all of a sudden TVA agents, led by Strongest Wayman, come and take her. She's brought to court, and she stomps on both the Strongest Wayman's feet, takes her magical remote and escapes, because apparently that's all it took, and our Loki couldn't even do that. Strongest Wayman tells Mobius that C20 is dead. Now remember how the sacred timeline was thrown into chaos after bestest Loki ever set off all those charges? Well, the writers didn't. Both Lokis are sitting on rocks, waiting to die, when Loki delivers the most memorable line of the season.
You're amazing.
They hold hands, which causes a branch on the timeline, and right before they're about to be killed, TVA agents arrive and take them. The Lokis are split up, and bestest Loki ever gets more guards because she's more dangerous. Loki is thrown into a portal that brings him to a past moment with Lady Sif after he cut some of her hair off as a prank, and this happens.
Naive, craven, pathetic worm. I hope you know you deserve to be alone, and you always will be.
Mobius wants to interrogate both Lokis together, but Strongest Wayman says she's too dangerous. We go back to Loki being emasculated repeatedly until he does this.
I beg you, I'm a horrible person. I really am. I crave attention. I'm a narcissist. It's because I'm scared of being alone.
You are alone, and you always will be.
Emasculating him even more. Mobius comes through the portal and brings him back to the interview room. Loki tells him they're all variants, but Mobius doesn't believe him, and he sends Loki to get even more emasculated. Diversity Hire, who's been shaken up the whole episode, meets bestest Loki ever, opens a portal, and says to come with her. Mobius and Strongest Wayman close the case on Loki and chat. Mobius is also shaken up now. Strongest Wayman tells Mobius she wouldn't let him interrogate bestest Loki ever because she wanted to protect him. Mobius switches their magical remotes without her noticing and leaves. Diversity Hire brings bestest Loki ever to the warehouse and says she saw something when she was enchanted. Bestest Loki ever tells her it was her life before the TVA, she can't create memories, and that they're all variants. Diversity Hire asks her to do it again, and instead of seeing her memories, we get this. Mobius finds a video of the Strongest Wayman interrogating C20 and figures out she was pruned after saying they were variant. He goes back to Loki and tells him he was right. They go back and Strongest Wayman and her guards are waiting. Mobius gets pruned and that's the last we see of him. Or is it? They take Loki and bestest Loki ever to the timekeepers to get pruned in front of them. As they're about to get pruned, Diversity Hire shows up and takes off their collars and gives bestest Loki ever a big knife. Loki has trouble with his guards, even after he gets a big knife, because of course he does. But bestest Loki ever has no problem with hers. We barely see Loki fight and focus on the women. Bestest Loki ever takes Strongest Wayman out, and Loki finally takes out his guards. Bestest... You know what? I'm getting sick of saying that, so we'll just call her Sylvie. So Sylvie throws her knife and cuts off one of the timekeepers' heads. We find out that the timekeepers are robots. What a shocker. Loki stumbles through his words while trying to confess his love for Sylvie and gets pruned by Strongest Wayman. Sylvie gets her down on her knees and says she's going to tell her everything. We get a post-credit scene with Loki waking up somewhere, and standing over him are a black Loki, kid Loki, comic book Loki, and an alligator Loki. Episode 5 starts out with Strongest Wayman telling Sylvie that Loki isn't dead, and he was transferred to a void at the end of time, and tricks Sylvie into trusting her. But what she said was true. Loki freaks out because no one will tell him what's going on. They then tell him what I just told you, and Eliath, a giant cloud / guard dog, oops, wrong one. Anyways, he makes sure no one leaves. We find out the kid Loki is the leader, and they go to their hideout. Strongest Wayman tells Miss Minutes to search for files regarding the beginning and end of time. They come up with a plan to go to the void, and as they shake on it, Strongest Woman doesn't let go and lets some guards arrive to take out Sylvie, betraying her. Could have seen that coming. Sylvie steals her magical remote and ends up pruning herself. Loki asks them if they've ever met a woman variant of them, and comic book Loki says what we're all thinking.
Sounds terrifying.
And Loki says that's what's so great about her. He tells them the plan and says he wants to kill Eliath, and they laugh in his face. He tries to leave, but is met by President Loki and his goons, which again was only there for the trailer. Sylvie wakes up and is chased by Eliath. She uses her enchanting powers for a split second for some reason, and sees something. As she runs, a car pulls up and it's Mobius. Remember C-20? The writers don't. We never see her again. Sylvie gets in the car. We cut back to Loki's. We find out Black Loki betrayed Kid Loki and led President Loki there so his goons could help him take over. President Loki betrays Black Loki. Then President Loki's goons betray them and they fight. Oh, and Alligator Loki bites off President Loki's hand. They fight and the other 4 Lokis leave. Loki convinces the other Lokis to help, but comic book Loki says they'll only bring him to Eliath. Then they're out. Sylvie tells Mobius to turn around and go back to Eliath because reasons. They run into the Lokis, and Loki runs to her like a little boy who's getting reunited with his mother after getting lost at a theme park for a couple hours.
Sylvie.
Sylvie makes fun of his plan to kill it and insists on enchanting it. Cut back to Strongest Woman, who interrogates Diversity Hire. Diversity Hire deduces that Strongest Woman wants to find out who's behind the TVA as well. She asks Miss Minutes for the files regarding the creation of the TVA for real this time. Mobius and the other Lokis have a conversation while Loki and Sylvie have their own. Loki uses his powers to make a blanket and puts it around both of them, instead of making some clothes. He's been in the same boring suit the whole show, just to make Sylvie stand out. They go over the plan again, in case you forgot. Sylvie gives Loki the magical remote, since she's bestest ever, but he gives it to Mobius, because if she goes, he goes. Kid Loki gives Loki a dagger, and the other Lokis leave. Loki gives Mobius a hug, because he's a softie now, and Mobius leaves. They approach Eliath, and Loki goes behind Sylvie like a coward. She says they'll need to create a distraction. He then decides to be a man and do it, but it doesn't work. Now this is the best part of the series. This is where comic book Loki turns into Ultimate Super Chad Loki. So Ultimate Super Chad Loki creates a fake Asgard with illusions to distract Eliath. Sylvie takes Loki's hand and says they're going to enchant it together, because they're the same. Ultimate Super Chad Loki can't hold it and falls to his knees. He gets up, and in the most ultimate Super Chad way possible, he does this. He laughs in the face of death and presumably dies. They then enchant Eliath and open up a path to the castle. They walk toward it and the episode ends. Now, we finally get to the season finale. They get to the castle and Sylvie needs a moment, so they just stand there. Riveting stuff. The door opens on its own, and they slowly walk in. Miss Minutes pops up and welcomes them. She says he who remains created and controls all. Miss Minutes tries to cut a deal with them that they can live the lives they've always wanted. Loki ruling and Sylvie having lifetime good memories, while they're all together on the same timeline, and the TVA can operate as usual, but they decline. Cut the Strongest Woman in the TVA. Miss Minutes goes back to her and gives her different files she didn't ask for. Miss Minutes said he thought they'd be more useful. Strongest Woman asks who, and Miss Minutes leaves. Loki and Sylvie slowly walk down the hallway for a minute, and a door opens, which finally reveals he who remains, but we'll call him Alpha Beta, because... Yep. They go up in an elevator to his office and have a seat, where they talk for most of the episode. Mobius returns to the TVA and confronts Strongest Wayman. She tries to call in a hunter to get him, but Diversity Hire went back to Fremont, Ohio in 2018 with them to a school where Strongest Wayman worked before the TVA, and showed them the Strongest Wayman as a teacher, convincing them they had lives before the TVA. They knew to go there because Mobius briefly looked at a pen she had in episode 2. I'm not kidding.
I don't remember this. This must be from that. Yeah, unless you keep on the side. That's not going to work out the way you think it is, now that we know your secret.
Alpha Beta tells Loki and Sylvie he knows everything that's going to happen, and that he paved the road for them to get there. Mobius and Strongest Wayman argue about free will. She tries to leave through a portal, but Mobius turns on a baton and tries to prune her. He jabs, misses, and she takes it, kicks him down, and points it at him. She decides not to prune him, and Mobius asks her where she's going to go. She says,
"In search of free will,"
and leaves, even though she just argued against free will 30 seconds ago. Cut back to Alpha Beta's office. Sylvie asks who he is, and he says,
"I've been dubbed many names by many people. A ruler, a conqueror."
Hinting that he's Kang. Oh boy. He then explains that in the 31st century, a variant of his discovered that there were universes stacked on top of his. Other variants discovered the same thing. There was peace for a while, but some versions of him wanted to conquer the new worlds they discovered, causing all-out war and nearly causing the end of everything. The first variant, which is this one, discovered Eliath, harnessed his power, and experimented on him. He weaponized Eliath and ended the multiversal war. Once he isolated their timeline, he created TVA to manage the flow of time. He tells them, if you think I'm evil, then wait until you meet my variants. He gives them 2 options. They can kill him and destroy all of it, and there would be an infinite amount of him, or they can take over the TVA. Loki asks him why he would give up control, and he responds by saying he's tired and older than he looks. He's gone through tons of scenarios, trying to look for the right person to take over, and they came in 2. There's a loud rumbling, and Alpha Beta says they just crossed the threshold. He tells them he lied about knowing everything that was going to happen, but he did know up to now. Sylvie thinks he's lying and lunges at him with her knife, but Loki grabs her and tells her they should talk about it. He thinks Alpha Beta is telling the truth. They argue about it and fight at the same time. She thinks he wants the throne and stops trusting him. It looks like she's about to kill Alpha Beta, but this happens.
Sylvie, stop. Stop.
Shouldn't her momentum have continued, causing her to cut Loki's head clean off? Never mind. Loki starts crying again and tells her he doesn't want to hurt her, and he doesn't want the throne. He just wants her to be okay. She kisses him, because she has to initiate, and pushes him in a portal she opened with the thingy he put on his desk, and he returns to the TVA. Sylvie kills Alpha Beta. Before he dies, he tells her, "I'll see you soon." We see branches forming on the sacred timeline. Mobius and Diversity Hire are watching. Loki runs to find them, and when he does, he tells them that they freed the sacred timeline. The Alpha Beta was behind everything, and the other versions of him are coming, but they don't remember him. Loki looks at a giant statue of Alpha Beta, or at least another version of him, and the show finally ends. The show wasn't even about our Loki.
This isn't about you.
They can't have a show or movie centered around a toxic white male, or even a man in general. The Falcon and Winter Soldier needed Sharon Carter to help them take down who they tried to make a sympathetic female villain. But Doctor Strange can't be in WandaVision because, quote, here's the white guy, let me show you how power works. And Tony Stark can't be in Black Widow because, quote, she doesn't need the boys. So they added Sylvie.
Right.
Sylvie was a narcissistic know-it-all, bestest ever Mary Sue, who constantly puts Loki down. She was right at every turn and easily beat everybody that got in her way. She's so amazing that she taught herself magic as a child. When we get to the big decision, they don't even debate it, and she tosses Loki to the wayside when he tries to tell her to think about it. Loki is a little bitch boy now. He cried at least 4 times in the show, I think, which is something he'd never do. Especially 2012 Loki, which is this Loki. He follows this female variant of him around for 2/3 of the show. He talks about how amazing Sylvie is every chance he gets. He's always wrong. He He literally hid behind Sylvie when they confronted Elias. He's literally kicked in the balls, punched in the face, and brought to his knees by Lady Sif again and again until he admits how pathetic he is. And finally, he's now bisexual. He's now a completely different character. And a show that was marketed to be about him. They lied, laughed and spit in your face, and shoved the bestest ever female Loki down your throat while destroying the character you loved. Now, Kang must be a huge feminist, because TVA is completely run by women. Every position of power was held by a woman from what I could tell. All women of color that we could see. They remind you of this every chance they get. Mobius was either talked down to by the women or he reminded them of how amazing they are.
I feel like I'm always looking up to you. I like it. It's appropriate.
Mobius was one of the best parts of the show, despite him being a complete kiss-up, but only because he's played by Owen Wilson. He tried his best with what he was given, but the writers did everything they could to keep the man down. Well, except for Ultimate Super Chad Loki, but that was probably an accident. Strongest Whammon and Diversity Hire are both extremely annoying and snarky throughout the whole thing. But the thing is, I don't know if they did it on purpose. They do this with almost every female character with power and entertainment these days. Because they look at a man in position of power who doesn't joke around, is strictly business, or an army general and try to mimic it with women. Females handle things differently, obviously, but they try to do it anyway, because they think masculinity means being powerful. That's also why they try to defeminize women. These people think that women being attractive means you can't be powerful, and they call it toxic masculinity. Kang was beta as fuck. I know that wasn't Kang the Conqueror, but gotta make a good first impression if he's gonna be your next big bad. This season was one big therapy session. It was sitting and talking, standing and talking, and walking and talking. There was barely any action, and when there was, Loki got destroyed. The show was badly paced and badly written by inexperienced writers. Not even Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson could save this shit show. This was the most intersectional product Marvel has put out yet. It's made by people who either don't care, don't know, or hate the characters in the source material, and want to insert their own agenda, tearing the whole thing down in the process. In this case, the showrunner Kate Herron's goal was to make Loki bisexual. All she cared about was projecting her own sexuality onto Loki. As a result, we got this shit show. These are the people Marvel is hiring to take the MCU in the next phase. The showrunner for WandaVision said she didn't even know how to read a comic book, and they hired her for 2 more projects. They undermined the tough choices and the sacrifices our heroes made during the Infinity Saga by making everything predetermined. They also undermined the stakes by what they did with the Infinity Stones. Look, you can be excited for whatever you want, but I'd temper those expectations if I were you. If you thought this was bad along with the rest of Phase 4 so far, then it's about to get a whole lot worse. At least this show is over and they won't hurt the character of Loki anymore.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, I hope you enjoyed my review. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more. Tell me what you thought about the show. Did you like it, dislike it, or think it was somewhere in the middle? Also, I have a sports channel called The Thoughtful Outlaw Sports, so check that out as well if you're interested. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.